President Muhammadu Buhari promised no longer to complain about problems on ground when he took power. Senate gets tough on ministries, agencies and parastatals for not submitting their audited reports, some dating back 25 years. In international news, the UK government faces showdown in Parliament over contempt charge. And on sport, Leone disqualified from next year's African Cup of Nations.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. President Muhammadu Buhari has told Nigerian citizens living in Poland that he would no longer complain about problems his administration inherited from the previous government. He says belly aching over the country's history of corruption and mismanagement of resources has not helped his administration much. He says he would now face the challenges head-on. President Buhari is in Poland attending the COP24 summit on climate change. The president told the Nigerian diasporans he felt lucky to have won the presidency on the fourth try. He said it's a job for which he asked, so he won't complain. The president told his audience security of Nigerians, the environment and the institutions are his administration's top priorities. He referred to the Boko Haram group that was holding 17 local government areas when he took office. He says now Boko Haram hosts no local government area. He says it had not been easy to fund the war against terror. Nigeria already faces high unemployment. Now, a report by the National Bureau of Statistics says the numbers have risen by nearly 30% this year to 16 million unemployed, with up to 2 million more joining the rolls of the unemployed by the end of the year. Another deflating report is that Nigeria has now pulled ahead of India as having the largest number of persons living in extreme poverty. Washington-based Brookings Institution says nearly 90 million Nigerians fall into this category. That's like half the Nigerian population. Economists say new economic policy proposals are unlikely as the nation's economy has been fixated for some time now because of the upcoming elections. In September last year, Nigeria exited its worst recession in nearly 3 decades, but unemployment and poverty are still punching the nation in the belly. Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, says the country has saved $21 billion since it began cutting its food importation in January 2015. Emefiele also said on Friday at the annual bankers' dinner in Lagos that the country's monthly food import bill declined from more than $650 million to $160 million between 2015 and this year. He said the reductions in food import were remarkably noticeable on rice, fish, milk, sugar and wheat. The CBN governor says the policy would be maintained. Emefiele also said the central bank as an agent of development and for its aim to ensure self-sufficiency to reduce the country's dependence on imports. His institution has strengthened its development finance activities.
Nigeria's economy remains the largest in Africa by the size of its GDP, with a very well diversified mix of opportunities across different sectors of our country, such as ICT, manufacturing, solid minerals, trade and agriculture. We are in a better position today than we were in 2016-2017. Don't forget, reserve was 23 billion in October 2016. You could say that we were weak then. Today, reserve is comfortably at $44 billion, so you can imagine that we do have the strength to confront you, and we will do so.
As campaigns roll into full swing, endorsements are beginning to surface. One such support was announced on Monday by Yoruba elders and leaders who are throwing their weight behind the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar. The leaders and elders include a leader in the Pan-Yoruba socio-political group, Afenifere, Chief Ayo Adebanjo, former PDP Deputy National Chairman, Chief Olabode George, Professor Banji Akitoye, Senator Femi Okuromu, and Chief Ebenezer Babatope. The leaders and elders renewed their call for restructuring of the country, which they say would lead the nation to equity, fairness and justice. A communique issued by the group calls for restructuring of the Nigerian Union so there would be equity, fairness and justice. The communique also states that the elders and leaders adopt Atiku Abubakar as the Yoruba presidential candidate because of his support for restructuring. Yoruba leaders and elders made this point at their one-day Southwest colloquium in Lagos on Monday. The Nigerian Senate has decided to get tough on the issue of auditor reports which many government agencies and institutions have not submitted in years. The Senate says the ones it received this year were actually for 2016. The Senate says most of the ministries, agencies and parastatals have contravened Section 85 of the 1999 Constitution by not submitting their audited account. Some of the backlog is reported to go as far back as a quarter of a century. The Office of the Auditor General has been given a 2-week ultimatum to get the audited reports of the State House. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Nigerian Ports Authority, and so many others. The Auditor General has also mandated to carry out a holistic auditing of the accounts of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, for the past 5 years. The federal government has secured a fresh $200 million loan to fund Nigeria's electrification project. African Development Bank has approved a $150 million sovereign loan to the Nigerian government to co-finance this project, while $50 million is approved from the Africa Growing Together Fund. AGTF is a $2 billion facility sponsored by the People's Bank of China and is administered by African Development Bank. Last year, Nigeria received a World Bank approval for a $350 million loan for this same project. The federal government announced on Monday that Chief of Army Staff Lieutenant General Tiko Buratai has been ordered to return to the northeast to oversee the fight against Boko Haram. He is to stay there until Boko Haram insurgents are crushed. The federal government has also instructed Chief of Defense Staff General Abayomi Olonishakin and General Buratai to overhaul operational commands of major operations in the country. This are to include especially Operations Lafia Dole in the northeast, Operation Delta in the Niger Delta, Operation Sharandaji in Zamfara and Katsina State, and Operation Washe in the southwest. Those steps are being taken after the attacks on troops of Operation Lafia Dole in the northeast, the latest of which is the attack on the troops of 157 Battalion stationed in Malete, northern Borno, in which 23 soldiers died. President Muhammad Buhari has ordered the immediate procurement of critical equipment for the armed forces. Coming up, African stories, Zimbabwe medical doctors on strike again. And later in international news, the UK government faces parliamentary showdown over its contempt charge. Stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
This used to be me. But that was before I got the perfect bag. It's handy and easy to use. All I need in one compact space, just like my MTN Extra Value plan. I used to get one plan for my calls and then try to remember which data plan worked for me. Roaming was a totally different ballgame. Not anymore. I've got the MTN Extra Value all-in-one plan. If you're a data buff like me, you get extra data with some talk time. And if you like to make calls, you get extra talk time with some data. And when I'm abroad, I automatically browse, chat, and call right on the same plan. MTN Extra Value was made just for me.
More of data or calls, whichever one you prefer. MTN Extra Value is made just for you.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In African stories, a union official in Zimbabwe says doctors at public hospitals have begun a strike on Monday for the second time this year to demand better pay and conditions. More than half of public sector doctors joined indefinite strike as President Emmerson Mnangagwa's government struggles with a deteriorating economy. The southern African nation is short of US dollars, the currency it had adopted in 2009. This has resulted in price spikes and shortages of basic goods, medicines and fuel. Secretary General of the Zimbabwe Hospital Doctors Association, which represents more than 1,000 members, Matabisi Bebe, said most junior doctors at the 5 major hospitals had downed tools to protest overpay, allowances and drug shortages. Bebe says they are understaffed, underpaid, and there are no medications in the hospitals. He says the duration of the industrial action depends on when the government gives a proper practical solution. Germany Development Minister Gerd Müller says the country will unveil an initiative at UN talks on climate change this week to attract more private investments in projects in Africa and elsewhere. Müller told the RND newspaper network that Germany would send a strong signal at the UN Climate Conference in Katowice, Poland, with its Alliance for Development and Climate Initiative and a pledge to spend an additional €1.5 billion on climate protection. Delegates from almost 200 nations will seek to produce a rule book to flesh out details of the Paris Agreement of 2015, which the United States, at the behest of President Donald Trump, has announced to quit. Mueller said it was imperative to help countries such as Brazil, India, China, and many nations in Africa to develop their ability to provide electricity for their growing populations without relying on coal production. He said more than 70 companies had already signed up for the new German initiative, which seeks to boost private funds for climate projects in developing countries and emerging economies. Preparations for presidential elections in the Democratic Republic of the Congo are said to be progressing well. The country's electoral commission says it has acquired all the polling materials needed to organize elections this month. Campaigns have also begun. The election had previously been delayed for 2 years because President Kabila had remained in office after his mandate expired in 2016. Now preparations are in full swing. The government has brought in army trucks to transport election materials across the country. The country's Independent Electoral Commission, Senate, says it is ready to organize the vote. UN figures put the DRC's population at 80 million, majority of whom lives in poverty. Many Congolese citizens say they want their next leader to improve the economy and uphold democratic principles. DRC has never seen a peaceful transfer of power since it gained independence from Belgium in 1960. Meanwhile, one of the main opposition candidates, Martin Fayulu, says a plan to use electronic voting machines in the presidential election is illegal and wants ballot papers used instead. Fayulu says the Electoral Commission is going to use the new machines to ensure the governing coalition's candidate, Emmanuel Ramazani Shadari, becomes the next Congolese president. The Electoral Commission says the use of machines is to ensure the vote is fair. The U.S. State Department has said it will reopen its embassy in the Democratic Republic of the Congo more than a week after it closed because of what it says was a terrorist threat. The embassy and other facilities in the capital, Kinshasa, have been shut for 8 days, and U.S. citizens were advised to keep a low profile. U.S. officials informed foreign diplomats that the embassy closure is due to the arrest last month of a cell of Tanzanian jihadists from a Uganda Islamic group called the Allied Democratic Forces. Congo's foreign minister said in a news conference on Friday that the threat against U.S. government facilities was real and serious. Meanwhile, 16 persons have been killed during clashes between troops and rebels in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. While most of those killed were rebels, some were government forces. A senior U.S. official, Tibo Nege, is on a rare visit to Eritrea. Until recently, the country was internationally isolated and under sanctions. The U.S. Assistant Secretary for Africa met President Isaias Afwerki. His visit comes at a time when significant changes are taking place in the region, following an end to hostilities between Ethiopia and Eritrea. Sanctions imposed on Eritrea in 2009 were lifted last month. The human rights group Amnesty International has called on Nagy to use the visit to address what it calls Eritrea's dire human rights record. Amnesty wants the U.S. to put pressure on the government to release what it calls prisoners of conscience. Nairobi County Governor has suspended a ban on public minibuses in the city center. We reported earlier today a ban on matatus as a result of what the authorities called congestion. Commuters in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, have now been spared a second day of chaos. Pictures of stranded commuters were shared online on Monday, with many expressing anger at the authorities for the ban. City authorities announced last week that the minibuses known as matatus will have to pick up and drop off passengers at a terminal outside the city's central business district. They said the directive was an attempt to decongest the capital, where more than 20,000 buses operate. Governor Mike Sonko said the plight of commuters has led him to suspend the ban. When we return, international stories. The UK government braces for showdown over contempt charge. And later sports, Sierra Leone disqualified from next year's African Cup of Nations. Don't go away, we'll be right back.
You are watching ANN.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Adam, go and bring us your husband. Okay, hello baby. We're in this together, okay? Can you hear me? Keep coming forward. Wait, stop. You okay, lean to your right. Keep walking down, keep walking to the left, yes. You're almost here. Keep going. You are here. Wow, you did it.
I'm just so glad I didn't have to use my cane to do this.
And I am so glad no other man got you before me. Let me be your eyes.
We will never stop working to give you a network you can rely on, so you can enjoy life's special moments. MTN, everywhere you go.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow the story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News, news across the globe. Israeli forces have launched what they call an operation to expose and neutralize tunnels between Lebanon and Israel, allegedly dug by armed group Hezbollah. The operation was announced by the Israeli military on Tuesday. Israeli military spokesman Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus says the operation would only take place on Israel's side of the border and that it will not extend into Lebanon. In a tweet, Israeli military spokesperson Avichai Adrei said the Lebanese government is responsible for the build-up of the tunnels, saying they were endangering Lebanese citizens. Hezbollah has not responded to the military operation yet. A Sri Lanka court has barred former President Mahinda Rajapaksa from acting as Prime Minister while it hears a petition challenging his refusal to step down, despite losing 2 no-confidence motions last month. Judge Harjuna Obayasekara issued the stay order on Monday, saying irreparable damage would be caused if Rajapaksa and ministers of his cabinet continue to hold office. The Court of Appeal will sit again next week to deliver a verdict. Sri Lanka has been in crisis since October 2016 when President Maithripala Sirisena sacked Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe and replaced him with Rajapaksa, a controversial but popular leader accused of corruption and grave human rights abuses. CIA Director Gina Haspel will brief U.S. Senate committee leaders on the killing of Saudi columnist Jamal Khashoggi. The Wall Street Journal reports the briefing will take place today. Haspel will brief Senate committees on foreign relations, armed services and appropriations. She had already briefed the Senate Intelligence Committee. U.S. President Donald Trump has written to Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan to seek help with Afghan peace talks. Trump wants to end a 17-year-old war between Afghan security forces and the Afghan Taliban militants who are fighting to drive out international forces and establish their version of strict law. U.S. officials have long been pushing Pakistan to prevail on the Taliban leadership to bring them to the negotiating table. Washington says the leadership is based on the country. Trump told Khan the Pakistan relationship was very important to the United States and to finding a solution to the Afghanistan conflict. Last week, Afghan President Ashraf Ghani says he had formed a 12-strong team to negotiate peace with the Taliban, but warned that implementation of any deal would take at least 5 years. Speaker of the British House of Commons says the United Kingdom government may have contravened parliamentary rules by failing to publish in full legal advice it received regarding British Prime Minister Theresa May's widely criticized Brexit deal. In a statement to the Commons late on Monday evening, Speaker John Bercow said there was an arguable case that a contempt of Parliament had been committed by the government by not disclosing the full extent of counsel it had been given on May's European Union withdrawal plan. His decision means parliamentarians will vote on Tuesday whether to refer the case to the Cross-Party Common Standards Committee. If a majority votes in favor of passing the issue up to the committee, it will then be tasked with determining whether a contempt took place and, if deemed necessary, recommending a punishment. Just ahead, sports. Sierra Leone disqualified from next year's African Cup of Nations. Stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
If you know fit go internet or follow for Twitter, you know fit snap photo send or get it photo send. Now because you dey use Palasa, your phone no dey answer. See me see wahala. My brother, go get smartphone, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone. Phone wey no go for your hand, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone. Phone wey no fit take selfie. Drop that Palasa phone. No be correct phone, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone.
Upgrade to a smartphone today and get double data for 6 months on any MTN data bundle you buy. Simply purchase a smartphone from any store anywhere in Nigeria or bring your current smartphone from any network. Insert your MTN SIM card to start enjoying your double data bonus. Offer is open to all new and existing MTN subscribers. Join the largest smartphone movement today.
Make it not for your hand, that's Palasa phone.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News and Sports. Sierra Leone has been disqualified from the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations qualifying campaign because of government interference in the country's football association. That means Kenya and Ghana qualify for next year's Nations Cup finals from Group F. FIFA had suspended Sierra Leone from all football competitions in October and then launched an investigation. They have not played any qualifying matches since that ban, which was imposed after the country's Anti-Corruption Commission barred Sierra Leone Football Association President Isha Johansson and General Secretary Christopher Kamara from the governing body's office. Both have denied any wrongdoing. Luka Modric, Real Madrid and Croatia midfielder, has won the 2018 Ballon d'Or, becoming the first player other than Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo to claim the award in more than a decade. Modric, 33, won his third successive Champions League in May before helping Croatia to a first World Cup final. Brazil and AC Milan forward Ricardo Kaká was the last player other than Messi or Ronaldo to win it in 2007. Ronaldo, who joined Juventus from Real Madrid in the summer, came second. Barcelona forward Messi finished fifth. That is CNN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other stories, visit our website, annafrica.net. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.